unites the various schools of Chassidus?
So the question is, what is the unifying factor between all these branches? So that's a very good question, because if you know a little bit about the different strands of Chassidus, especially in terms of its particular practice, its indigenous practice that's very particular to each branch of Chassidus. So, for example, in Chabad, one of the main practices of Torah in the Chassidic Chabad, in the opinion of Chabad, is the idea of Hisbonenus, the idea of contemplation, this meditative contemplative act, usually done near davening, before prayer, after prayer, or during prayers itself, during davening itself, which is more a contemplative practice where a person sits and meditates and thinks for half hour, how long is it? I think that's more very much connected to Chabad. Chabad is intellectual, like a type of intellectual practices. And then you have something that's almost diametrically opposite, also part of Chassidus, which, of course, Chassidus HaKlali, general Chassidus is, let's say, in Breslov. So if Chabad has Hisbonenus, in Breslov, it's very much the practice of Hisbonenus. That's, according to Reb Nachman, a very important part of the teachings of what it means to be a Chassid, is a person to go out into the field and to talk to Hashem, to speak to Hashem as a person speaks to a friend, Gishul or Eo, to really pour out your heart to Hashem. This is the idea of Hisbonenus. This is another practice. Then within, these are Russian Chassidus, more Russian, Ukraine. You go into Poland, and then where Chassidus came, and then certainly with the Yida Kaddish, and then eventually with Kotsk, and then in Sakhatshov and Ger, the main idea of Chassidus and the way it was expressed to be a Chassidic Jew practicing Chassidus is to learning Torah, learning Torah Lishma, obviously learning Torah with a great diligence. In fact, some of the greatest scholars of the Polish, of that branch of Chassidus, for example, the Avnei Nezer, Sakhatshov, most of his writings that we have is on Nigla, is on Torah, regular, halachic issues. He's a tremendous Gaon, obviously. And very few teachings we have of, that he said on Chassidus, and he was a Chassidic Rebbe, he said Torah also. Torah's Chassidus, Shemesh Shmuel brings us sometimes from his father. And that was in Kotsk. That was the Avodah is really, Kotsk is particularly emes, the truth, to be truth, to think, to be honest, to be very much clear of what you're doing and to be honest with yourself. But then with Sakhatshov and Ger was very much about the Torah, learning Torah. And then you have, let's say, Chassidus like Karlin, which is very passionate, and the way they daven, the way they praise, which with a lot of excitement and screaming and shouting. And then you have more modern versions of Chassidus, which means the later generations, like, for example, Satmar, which is a large body of Chassidus, which the main expression of Torah Chassidus, of teaching of Chassidus, was through Gemilas Chasadim, through doing kindness to other people. Bikur Cholim and Gemilas Chasadim, this is a very visiting the sick and helping other people with stock. And that was a very, until today it still is, a very, very important part of that Chassidus. And then in visions you have singing, connected a lot with Tefillah as well. In Slonim you have Nishmas Kol Chai. Every Chassidus has a very particular type of way of expressing itself. So the real question is, what is the Nekuda Mishtefes? What is actually the underlying theme that connects all these branches to the teachings of the Baal Shem Tov and the Torah Chassidus, the revealing of Torah Chassidus, of the teachings of Chassidus? So there is a letter from the Rebbe Rashab that the Rayatz, his son, asked him a question about to explain what Chassidus is, if he can give it a definition. And in the beginning of the letter, the Rebbe Rashab, who's the fifth Chabad Rebbe, Shalom Dov Ber, a great Rebbe, writes to him that we never thought about this. What is Chassidus? We never really discussed what it is. Sort of he's saying it's like it's life itself, so we never really discuss what's life. You can discuss what is life for, what's the purpose of life, but life itself is something you don't discuss. And he doesn't. He'll say a few words, and he says something. But it's interesting that there's also a mimer. There's actually a Chassidic discourse, an original Chassidic discourse from the Alter Rebbe, where the Alter Rebbe, the first Chabad Rebbe, is the mimer is Ma'al Chassidus. What is Chassidus? And the Alter Rebbe says there are two types of explanations of what Chassidus does. One is that it explains the mitzvahs, the purpose of the mitzvah, the deeper significance of the mitzvah. and one is to reveal Achdus Hashem, the oneness of Hashem. And he says that that's what he's doing. That his tafkid, his purpose in this world, is to reveal Achdus Hashem. In the Akdama, in the introduction of Teres Chaim, which is the sefer that was authored by the Alter Rebbe's son, the Mittler Rebbe, Dov Ber, he says that was the Alter Rebbe's mission in this world, is to teach Achdus Hashem, to speak about the oneness of Hashem. That's the Alter Rebbe. That's the first text that he wrote as a Chassidic text was Sharich Emunah. Sharich Emunah, which is the idea of the gates of unity of faith, which talks about the Achdus Hashem, the oneness of Hashem. So there's another letter from the Rebbe Rashab, which he writes with regards to Yutes Kislev, the liberation of the Alter Rebbe, that the Rebbe Rashab writes that Chassidus is oir v'chayas nafsheinu nitnu lanu. That Chassidus is the oir, the light, and the vitality of our soul. It's the light and vitality of our soul. The word is the appropriate and very strong word is that it's oir. Chassidus is light. Lichtigkeit in Yiddish, like the illumination, to make things light. Baruch Mezhebush, who is a grandson of the Baal Shem Tov, writes in Metzunin den Hora. In the beginning, he says that the derech of Chassidus, the way of Chassidus, is called the derech ha'or, the way of light. So Chassidus is light. The Veledniker, a fourth, fifth generation Rebbe, a very big Chassidic Rebbe, contemporary of Tzemach Tzedek, writes that Chassidus is really Torah Shel Mashiach. It's the Torah, the revealing of the Torah of Mashiach. So there's Havla Avon, there's the Torah that we have now, and then there's a higher level of Torah, which was a higher level of revelation, which will be revealed in the future. And the Torah Chassidus was a revealing of the future and the present, a higher level of Torah Shel Mashiach, the Torah of Mashiach. We'll understand what this means, but this is the Rebbe, the Mavich Rebbe, has a long conversation about this. It's called Kuntis Yanish Torah Chassidus, the Kuntis of what is Chassidus, and the Rebbe discusses the idea that Chassidus is the Yechidah Shemanefesh, the Yechidah, that's the essence of the soul. That there are four levels of Torah interpretation. There's Pshat, Remez, Drushayin. Pshat is the literal interpretation, and then there's the metaphorical interpretation, and then there's the secret interpretation, then the hinted interpretation, and then there is the Razin, the secret of the secret, which is the Yechidah Shebenefesh. Yechidah is the uniqueness part of the soul, the essence of the soul, which Yechidah Shebenefesh, this level of Yechidah, this level of the essence of the soul, is the Nitzis of Mashiach in the person. Every single person has a Nitzis of Mashiach, like the Maranayim brings down from the early Chassidic Rebbe as a student of the Baal Shem, the Chernobyler, that there's a Nitzis of Mashiach, the spark of Mashiach within every person. The spark of Mashiach within every person is the Yechidah Shebenefesh, is this Yechidah Shebenefesh, this level of Yechidah, which is the oneness that is undivisible, impossible to go into a state of exile, and impossible to be eclipsed and to be concealed. It's the part of the soul that's always whole, the perfection within ourselves. The perfection in the place of the brokenness in this world is a perfection or a level of our soul, which is the Yechidah. And Torah Chassidus is the revealing of that part of the soul. In the teachings of the Maggid, which the Baal Shem Tov had many students, some very prominent students, but the one that became the most prominent, meaning the one that had the most students, was the Maggid of Mezej, Reb Dov Ber. And in the teachings of the Torah Maggid, in the teachings of the Maggid, we see a word that appears continuously, which we've spoken about many times, the word that appears continuously throughout the teachings of the Maggid, which is the word ayin. Ayin is a very, very prominent word in the teachings of the Maggid. And if you look at the students, the writings of the real primary students of the Maggid, certainly the ones that were very dovuk, very connected to transmit the teachings of the Maggid to the next generation, like the Pri-Aretz of Mendel Vitebsker and the Chesed Avram HaMalach, which is the son of the Maggid, and even the Kedushas Levi, you see that the word ayin is the most prominent word in the entire Sefer. Almost every page has the word ayin in it. There was an autobiography that was written by a character, a Kantian philosopher called Shlomo Maimon, and it's like a sort of like a skeptical view, but he ends up, which is kind of historically it's interesting because it's the only text that we have that was written by someone that was not a student of the Maggid, that says what happened at the Maggid's table. And he says when he came to the Maggid of Mezrich, Dov Ber, he was enamored by the Kedusha, the holiness and the sanctity and the genius of the Maggid. And he was there for a short period of time. And really the genius of the Maggid was something that really took him, that the Maggid was able to connect so many different teachings. And then after a while, he started realizing that the Maggid really had, he says it's something that's negative, but really he didn't understand it's something really positive and something wonderful, but he came with certain blurry eyes. So he said that what happened was that after a long period of time, by being by the Maggid's table, he realized the Maggid really had one thing to say. And everything he said was like another variation of this one idea. And what was the one idea? Is ayin. And that was the essential teaching. And this is the Nukudah. This is actually very important. This is a very important thing. That the ayin, the oyer and the ayin. So we have the light. Chassidus is the light, and Chassidus is the ayin, which in translation could be expressed as bittul, like the nullification in our experience of it. It's a certain type of nullification or transparency of the ego self, the I of selfhood that's interested in its own perpetuation and survival, and therefore it leads to a place of arrogance and evil. It's the yetzer, the negative, the inclination, but not negative inclination necessarily, but the inclination towards things that are selfish, which eventually become selfish. And the ayin is the nullification of that, the transparency of that. There's a very sweet idea, very charming idea, that Degel Nachman Ephraim, who is a grandson of the Baal Shem Tov, that he writes that people say about that Misnagdim is antagonistic to the teachings of Chassidus, that Misnagdim lernen ya, that Misnagdim know how to learn, which is true, of course, Misnagdim know how to learn, but so did Chassidim. Chassidim weren't. They came from the same place. But the word in the street was, he says that Misnagdim lernen ya, and Chassidim lernen nicht. And Chassidim don't learn. So he says, it's true. It's true. But not what you think it means. Not that Chassidim don't know how to learn. It means that Chassid lernt nicht. A Chassid learns how to be nothing. So lernen nicht is the learning of nothingness. What does it mean to learn nothing, to learn to be nothing? So there's two postures that a person can have. There's actually two versions and the Gemara and Kedushin. There's two postures that a person can have. One is ani nivresi l'shamash eskaini. I am created to serve my master, which means it begins with the principle that I am. I have a certain tzura, a certain type of form, a certain type of way of being in this world, a certain way of thinking, a certain way of processing information, a certain way of thinking, a certain way of feeling, ani nivresi. And then I understand that ani nivresi l'shamash eskaini, that I'm here to serve my creator. So there's a level of submission to my creator. But then there's even a higher version, which is ani lo nivresi ela l'shamash eskaini. Not ani nivresi, I'm created to serve my master. Ani lo nivresi, I am not created only for. It's like a double negative, which means, not really, but it's ani loy ella, like I'm not only, which means I recognize that my whole life, and this is really what the avoid of ayin, and it means the spiritual work of being in a state of ayin, is recognizing that I am here not as an I, but I'm here for the I of HaKadosh Baruch Hu, the oneness of Hashem, to be expressed through me. And I'm just an instrument through where the Ratzon Hashem should be, the will of the Creator should be expressed through me. And I'm open to that. So there's never any type of resistance to the will of the Creator. Because when it's about my tzura, about my particular way of being in this world, let's say a person enjoys, to be more contemplative, to be, to do more cerebral things, let's say, for example. And then they're married and they have children, and now, life demands for them to, take out the garbage or to pamper a child. If it's about my I, then doing that seems to be in violation to my I, because that's the way I like doing. I like being in this world is doing this. And now, really, Hashem is saying, but yeah, that's generally who you are, and then who you should be. But things demand differently. Now Hashem wants you to do something else. When a person has an awareness, ani lo nivresi ella, that I'm only here to serve Hashem, my only existence as an I is here to serve Hashem, so I'm open to the experience of what does Hashem want from me right now. So what is the light? What is the nekudas ha'or, really? What is the spark of the light that exists within this particular thing that I experience right now that seems to be as darkness? The posture of being ayin in our own personal practice, in the way we live our lives, allows us to open ourselves up to always experience what is being presented as the light of Hashem that's being presented at this moment. So being in the ayin and being in the or is actually part of the same thing. And what that really is saying is that it's not, what is the light of Mashiach? The light of Mashiach is, and it's a glimpse of the light of Mashiach. The light of Mashiach is there's a means and there's an end. That means exile is a process of a means to get to an end. It's a journey to get to a destination. That's what exile means. It means you're not in the right place, you're not in the right time, and you're getting to that place. You're moving towards that direction. That's what really exile is. Exile comes from the word in Hebrew. The word exile is galus, which the root of the word is gal. It's like a wave, which means that it's a movement towards something else. Which means that there's nothing inherent in this thing in itself. Let's say, for example, taking out the garbage. This will be a most simple example, let's say, or even going to the bathroom, which seems to be just a point. There's no inherent objective in the act itself. It's just to get the result. If you want to take out the garbage, for example, we're using this metaphor. The tachlis is not the journey to get to the garbage can is not what you're going to get. You just want to get to the garbage. That's it. You want to theoretically, if you didn't have to walk to the garbage, it's not 30 feet away. You'd rather not have to walk to it. So what do you do in that 30 feet that you're walking towards getting to the garbage? From the perspective of galus, from the perspective of exile, which is process, which means I'm not yet there, the end is only reached when I get to that place. And in a bigger example, let's say if you use the example of literally using the restroom, the tachlis is the end result is actually I should get out of that place, and because I don't want to be there, but it's a necessity. So I need to be there in order to get to another place. But there's nothing inherent in that. But if you look in the teachings of the Torah and the teachings of the Baal Shem has yechudim, intentions that a person should have, spiritual intentions that a person should have, even when they're relieving themselves. What does he say? He's saying when you get to the nekudah, the point of the oyer of Mashiach, the light of Mashiach, which is the redemptive state that the world is inherent already in, not that it's a process to get to there, but to reveal it within that inherent state, to get to the place of the yichud, where in there's light, then that in itself is an end, not a means towards an end. This is what it means that Chassidus came to reveal the Torah Shel Mashiach. The Torah Shel Mashiach is the Yichud, the world of Yichud, the world of unity, of Yechidah Shebenefesh, at the level of Yechidah, which is the revealing of the light that exists already in the place of the darkness. Not that the darkness is just to get to the light, that there's a light within the darkness itself, that there's always light. The only way to break open that light is sometimes through, or always, is through bittul, is through submission. The submission to the process, and not getting stuck and saying I want to get to the next step because I'm not really enjoying this step. I really would get to the next step, and Hashem says no, but I want you to do this step right now. So the redemptive consciousness of doing this step right now is finding the oyer, finding the light in this thing in itself. So that's why the idea of Yechidah of Yechidah is to find that quality, that spark of oneness that exists right now. And paradoxically, or not, that in itself, so it's not a supplement for a messianic reality. It's a taste of the messianic reality, a taste of the redemptive reality, which because of that, because you know you can experience just a glimmer of that, that creates even greater kisufim, greater desire, greater longing for Mashiach, for the actual time when it will become realized and revealed in the entire world. So this is the idea of revealing within every single part of creation the spark, the light that exists within there, the light of Hashem that exists within there, which is always there. That's the only thing that really animates everything. And that's the ultimate of all existence, is the light, is the oir, to recognize that. And to recognize it within all states, within all times, within all spaces, and within all consciousness. This is why there is the revealing of the oir, the light of the Baal Shem Tov, is a sort of a democratization of spirituality, where everyone becomes accessible. It becomes accessible to everyone, because if it's process based, which is more like a linear state, like an intellectual state, then you say whoever's a greater scholar is more connected. Whoever knows more is more connected to the end, because it's about a certain type of enlightenment, a certain type of awareness. But if it's the light that's founded in everything, then it's relevant to everyone and every single situation. So the oir, the light of Chassidus, and what is Chassidus? Chassidus is to try to get a person to be connected to that light, to that lichtigkeit, to that illumination, to experience the dveikus, to experience the unity with Hashem in every single experience, in every single aspect that they're doing in this world, in every single situation that they're doing, always to be connected to the light. And a person should live, when the person feels lived in that connection with that light, then a person lives awakened and present and alert and sensitive, and senses the hashgacha of Hashem in every single aspect of their life. And that's the oir v'chayis of Hashem. That's the light and the vitality that was given to us. And that's really the nukud. That is the essence of Torah Chassidus, is to reveal that light. And it could be in many different ways. For one person, it could be through some type of meditative, contemplative state, where through deep contemplation, a person reaches an inner state of that light, of that connectivity, of that dveikus, of that connection. Or it could be through a person speaking to Hashem, and through his bodedus, and really speaking their heart out until so they really feel that deep connection and real dveikus, a real connectivity. Or it could be through singing, it could be through dancing, it could be through crying, it could be through, if they're laughing. Whatever the practice is, or being charitable, whatever the action is, it brings you to that place which gets you out of your yesh, out of your very strong sense of material existence or ego existence. It allows you to tap into something, to break it open, to get to the ayin. And when you get into the ayin, to that state of the ayin, you actually start feeling the oir, the light, the lichtigkeit, the helligkeit, the lightness, and the openness, and the expansiveness, and the state of higher or deeper states of consciousness. So that's the essence of what the teachings of Chassidus, which really is the essence of all different practices, but all getting to the same point. That's the point.
Fascinating. I'm thinking. So let's say you have a person who wants to connect to Chassidus, but they really identify with only one particular way. They connect to talking to Hashem. That's their thing. This other guy is really connecting to Milas Chasadim.
Right.
This other guy is learning the Marim of Chassidus. And if they really want to connect to the light of the Baal Shem Tov, is it shaykh for them to push themselves to at least be aware, or to try to connect in other ways, or is it more of like you can choose one path? Is that like, is there a is it preferred to choose one path and go the whole 9 yards? Or
is it to make a smorgasbord of everything?
Or is there a mila to putting it together, or do you lose something by trying to do that?
So the question is, that's a very good question. It's a separate question, but it's a good question. Yeah, it's a good question.
Definitely a different question.
It's a different question, but it's a separate question. It's an important question. There's two types of depth that a person can experience in life. One is a sort of like a horizontal depth, but it's not so deep. It's like it includes a lot of things, but you can't go really deep because it's a smorgasbord of a lot of different ideas. And you can nasha here, you can nasha here. But if a person really wants to go very high in something, like a vertical depth into something, or I guess vertical in the opposite direction, like go really deep into something, you really need to commit, like take a deep dive to really become great. I don't know if that's the right word, because the whole thing we're saying is you don't have to be great. The whole thing is that you're serving Hashem. But I'm just saying, if you want to go with this, with a practice, you want to go with it with fully.
To really immerse.
Yeah, you need to immerse yourself. You have to dedicate yourself. It's like anything in life, by the way. It's like anything. Like if you really want to love, right? You can't say you love everybody. It's an ideal state that you could love everybody, but the only way you can love everybody is if you actually love one person really, really much. Like if you dedicate your life to, let's say, to your wife or your husband, and you dedicate to your children, whatever you dedicate your life, and say, I'm going to love this person infinitely, and then you're going to get to the real depth of love, and you're able to really, truly experience what love is. And then when you experience truly what love is, then that love could like expand outward to include many more things. But if you start off with the premise that I'm going to start, loving everybody, it's possible in a very shallow and superficial way that you'll have a lot of love for a lot of people, but you'll never really experience what true love is. And I think that's the same thing when we think about spiritual practice. That we live in an age that so many things are so available, that there's so many different types of things that people are it's like a smorgasbord of ideas, of so many different ideas. And certainly a person that was not raised in a particular type of Chassidus, right?
Everyone's trying to convert each other to their way.
Yeah, everyone's trying to, exactly. So it becomes complicated, but I think in terms of really going deep, you have to take a deep dive. You have to decide, okay, this is my practice. Now, it doesn't mean you can't look at other Svarim. I mean, obviously, you can be inspired by other things.
You should choose a focus.
Yeah, you should choose one focus and say, this is what I want to do. These are this is my Rebbe. This is my practice. This is my minhagim. This is my customs, and living in a modern 21st century. Obviously, Hashem gave us a reason why we have all this accessibility to all different types of paths is so we should be able to see that and to gain inspiration from that. Certainly, there's no question. Like, even if you're doing his Oneness very deeply, and that's your practice, and you're very, meditative and very cerebral, and your Yiddishkeit, doesn't mean that you shouldn't like jump around and scream like a Karlin Chassid. It doesn't have to be a steer, but your practice is coming through that lens. It's like my halach yelach.
Posture, and then
Yeah.
things you're incorporating
Correct.
in a smaller way.
Correct. Because at the right times, I need it.
It could be stages within.
It's stages within. You see, the truth is that really you see that even these branches of Chassidus, they all have outlets of other expressions at different times. Like you'll say, okay, so Chabad is Oneness, yeah, but look at the Rebbe waving his hands and dancing. And this is a very there's a scholars of it, of course, but it's gained through a certain commitment to a certain path. Certainly when it comes to like minhagim, because it becomes very complicated. Like what's my way of doing it? So you have to like say, this is the way I'm doing it. I'm gonna go very deep, get into this, and I'm gonna able to include other things, but not just dancing around with every single thing. You end up with nothing. I mean, you end up like sort of. There's no depth of character because you didn't really commit yourself. I think the analogy of love is a very good example. Like a person that never really loves someone very deeply doesn't really know what love is. But when you have a child and you really know what love is, then you can actually love another person as well, or whatever, or wherever the love is expressed. But when your person really commits himself to love and really experiences it on a very deep level, then they really know what love is. And I think it's any type of spiritual thing. If you enter into it fully, then you can experience other things much more in a deeper way than in a superficial way.
Amazing. Yeah, that's very clarifying. Good advice.